and I am excited about Stephanie and Kate joining us from LPTexas. So in Texas, I'm here in Houston, we are very lucky that our entire executive leadership is all women now. So, again, we're focusing on male allies like Colin, listening and learning from women today. And so Kate and Stephanie, and if Becca joins us, then Becca, excited to have y'all with us. Colin is going to be a good listener and ask you guys about LPTexas, women's equality, Victory Red, and all of the amazing efforts that you ladies have been able to pull off independently and together. And we're excited to have you. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to have you on here. Lauren, do you want me to hide your video here? Okay, let's do that. Katie and Stephanie, how are we doing today, guys?
Great. I had to quickly, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get all my notifications off. I had to quickly come home and throw on a face because I was playing with a bunch of wonderful and strong women at my country club. It's Wednesday's Women's Day on the course, so all of us getting together and hanging out. So I had to bust at the door, put on a face, and get on this thing.
No problem. Well, I'm happy to have you here. And Miss Stephanie, how are you doing?
Oh, it's a beautiful day here in South Texas. Can't complain too much. No rain here, thankfully.
Man, I live in Houston as well, and I'm up in Charleston, South Carolina for the day, just getting out of the hurricane and that stuff.
Well, I'm in San Antonio, so a little bit further south-ish, west-ish of you, just a bit. But yes, no rain yet. We'll see.
Ooh, man, we got rain on the golf course. We got a little bit of a shower, so dry shampoo for the win, ladies.
For sure.
Miss Stephanie, you want to tell us just a little about who you are and what your backstory is and what brought you in the party?
I like to tease all the ladies that I'm probably the oldest libertarian in the group. I actually have done this before. I came to the party when I was about 14. It was 1995. I remember talking to people and on the left and in the right, and they all seemed to come to the same conclusion that the answer was bigger, more government, regardless of what the topic was, whether it was sex work or it was gun control. It was always, let's put in place more laws. And then I read a book called Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do by Peter McWilliams. If you've never read it, it's a little dated now, but it's phenomenal. And basically, he ended up dying in prison due to the draconian laws in California while he was trying to get his cancer treatments for medical marijuana. And I remember walking into my first meeting. I was the only person under the age of 30. I was the only female in the room. It was pretty daunting to be in that situation, but they were so nice and they welcomed me with open arms. And from there, I started the Aggie Libertarians with a friend of mine out at A&M, Chris Jaggi, and met some great libertarians. But again, it was usually me plus one other woman in the room. And then when I became secretary in the late 90s, it was me plus Nancy Neal in the room, and the rest were guys. And so if you think about that from the perspective of getting other people in the party, that becomes really difficult to kind of bring people in. So I've been a libertarian now for, 25 years. I don't admit that. And as a Texan, it's so great to see how many more women and just people of color and diversity that we have gotten in those past 25 years. Sorry, probably went on a little too long.
You're fine. We got time. That's a cool story. And Miss Kate, you're our Texas State Treasurer for the LP.
Yes.
Tell us just a little about who you are and where you came from and what brought you in the party.
Well, I'm Kate Prather, and I live in Northeast Texas, small town called Mount Vernon. It's 100 miles east of Dallas on I-30. And what brought me to the party was, I usually go back and I start kind of like in my past as well. In high school, I did Lincoln Douglas debate. So I feel like I got a extra education, especially when it came to political philosophies, due to the topics that I had to argue on both sides. So I was a little bit different even than in a highly Republican area. So I went off to college, decided to kind of get away from politics for a little bit. Obviously find yourself when you're in college. But I never found a true home. I never felt like my voice was heard. as a woman, but also as a Texan too. Because I mean, there's just a little bit of a different culture here in Texas when it comes to how you're raised, and so I just didn't feel like I had a home. So fast forward to 2016, I am a mother and of a 18-month-old and a 3.5-year-old, and I'm looking at my kids, and it's 2016, and I'm seeing Gary Johnson run, and I am seeing the whole, everybody's flocking around Hillary as, oh my gosh, this is what women can do, and I'm like, no, like that has no identity to me, like that is not anything I can even say remotely close to anything on my politics or my beliefs. And I was like, you know what? I'm a mother here. I'm dealing with issues right now where my liberties are being taken away. What does the future look like for my children? And that's when Mama Bear came out and the fire just lit under my ass. And I was like, I can't sit back as a parent and see my children's opportunities and liberties be taken away in backroom deals. I was like, I've got to do something. So I filled out an application for Franklin County LP and did my interviews, went through that. Went to my first national and state convention in 2018, learned a lot from that, met a lot of really great people, and just started going to more events in the DFW area. And learning and getting back to my debate roots and the philosophies that I was arguing at the time. And I found myself here. I wanted to do something more. I work from home, and I wanted to devote a lot of my time and my passion to the Liberty Movement and the Libertarian Party. So I decided to run for treasurer, which in the past has usually been a 1, 2, 3, not it kind of thing. And I was like, no, if it's me, fine, that's okay. It's not a 1, 2, 3, not it thing. I was determined to go in there and hold the office and really try to bring a new culture, help with these wonderful, beautiful ladies inside and out, this new culture of what the Libertarian Party can be, especially here in Texas. So we all have this amazing passion for what we do for liberty, but also for our offices. And I am thrilled to be working with these 3 beautiful, intelligent, passionate women in this liberty movement. And the next 2 years are going to be incredible.
So do you feel like there's different challenges? I mean, we have kind of an all-star, all-women lineup when it comes to the Texas executive leadership. What do you feel is the advantages of that, and what do you feel are the disadvantages of that?
Well, for as of right now, it's not just our leadership. We have some kick-ass Texas libertarian women right now. I mean, Lauren, and then we've got Casey Daly, who have just blown it out of the water with these independent projects to move the needle towards liberty a little bit further. And if it takes these women taking those projects on, and of course women also taking these offices on to bring more people in to feel like they have a home and it's comfortable, then let's do it. Again, I'm with Stephanie. I'm not big on identity politics, but if that's what it takes, because majority of people have been playing identity politics for centuries, then that's what it takes to move the needle, again, closer to liberty. We'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find libertarians that are really pushing identity politics, but it is a kind of a flavor du jour, and it does move people in emotional ways. Stephanie, what are your thoughts about working with an all-female team at the high level?
I think that oftentimes we'll comment on, you see all men teams all the time, and there's no comment. It's like it's normal. And what I would like to do is normalize women and men both, whether it's all women or all men or mixed gender, so that everybody's kind of on that same playing field. That's my goal, to where this is so common that we don't comment on it, that it's like, oh yeah, you've got a group of great people. But for now, it's so rare that it's remarkable. I was doing some research. It doesn't happen in the R&Ds any more than it does in any other party. So to me, it's exciting. Plus, you look at the qualifications of everybody who's a part of SLEC, a part of the executive committee. You have a really great group of well-educated people who are dedicated libertarians to the cause, and that gets me excited. The fact that you now have people who are different and others can look up to, is like, I see myself there, that also gets excited. So for me, it's not about the identity politics, it's about the accessibility that it now gives us.
Couldn't agree more. So what are your thoughts then on women's equality in general and how that's been pushed by the liberty movement and what needs to change and what we've been doing well on?
Kate, you want to go first? You're muted, Kate.
Yeah, let me.
There we go. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was going to let you field that one just because you've been in the liberty movement longer, so you've seen the evolution of women in liberty. But from my perspective, I'm seeing a lot more women join the liberty movement. If you're talking about our generalization of our identity to the general public and not other libertarians, there is a lot of opportunity there. I'm noticing that a lot of the general public likes to play identity politics, clearly, because right now everybody's on either team red, team blue, team black, team white, team, like, it's crazy, it's ridiculous. I think one thing we could do is we could have a bit of a more welcoming identity to everybody. And I think that's one of the things that we're kind of doing, is all these women who have decided, not as a, because I'm a woman, I'm going to, but as a, hey, I've got this great idea, I'm going to. And it just so happens it's all women right now. And it's really a really good push because, like Stephanie said, it's an identity. And so other people can relate to that and be like, oh, well, she's doing it, I could too. Whatever level that is on. And I think we need to do a better job of showing that we are inclusive as a party and as a movement for both genders and all genders, especially towards the GSM community.
Yeah,
I would totally go right off that. I've seen it change in just our verbiage and how we communicate with each other. Goodness, I remember probably the reason why I became secretary was because it was an acceptable kind of role back then. And I remember being called sweetheart and sugar and honey and all these other things. And I've noticed that doesn't exist as much now. And the casual kind of, I hate to use the word misogyny, but it is what it is, has evolved. What I would like to see change right now is dismissiveness. So a lot of times when we talk about things like misogyny or women's movement, it's okay, but we don't want to deal with the government. No, we can recognize that a problem exists, and we can recognize that something needs to be done and still disagree on how to accomplish that without taking away from the need for change. So in the liberty movement, that means accepting that, your fellow feminist may want to carry a weapon, and it's A-okay. It's recognizing that it's okay to be who you are, whether you are a woman or you are non-binary or a man or whomever you are. I would like to see it more as a come as you are, and we will accept you.
Yeah, well, it seems like the Libertarian Party has always been, at least in philosophy, along those lines. But practicality, we've kind of been changing our demographics a lot in the last 15, 20 years. We've attracted a lot of new people to the party. But now the question is, how do we make more impactful statements and push it to the next level? Because we're kind of at at a threshold, really, of where we could either grow and continue as the bigger parties are collapsing. But to do that, we need to be able to really show who we are, not just as the hardcore Ayn Rand libertarians, and how do we attract more women, and what are the big fights for women's equality that we've been doing. I think it's important to make those voices heard, at least those stories known. It's been an important
and one of the
part.
Fantastic things that's happening right now is, again, it just so happens that all these incredible people that are coming into and taking on these leadership roles, including like Joe, we just so all happen to be women. It's not anything in the party that was saying, oh, we need to elect all women so we look inclusive. That's the great thing about this, is we have our peers in the liberty movement, and we just, all these people are just so happening to be of one gender, which is good, because again, we want to make sure that the rest of the general population feels included in a party. And if that's what they need, is they need to have a reflection of a person to say, oh my gosh, she looks like me, she has kids like me at the same age, like she's got the same background as I do, then it's more likely for them to join. And of course with Joe and the Let Her Speak movement, I mean, Casey just hit it out of the park with Let Her Speak. That was an incredible movement that brought a lot of independents and non-voters to the forefront, that they are finally being heard. Because again, it's Let Her Speak. It's not just about Joe going to debates and letting her debate as a libertarian, regardless of her, gender, because we've dealt with this in the past. But the fact that, letting people have a voice and saying there's more than two crayons in the box.
Yeah, but you're also paying homage to, with the Victory Red movement, of traditional women's suffrage. It's interesting how you can let these things play onto each other so they can become useful again, for the next, whatever the next struggle is. And what did people do when they were going through various difficulties or political discrimination beforehand, and bringing that to the forefront. Can you tell us a little bit more about your Victory Red?
Yeah. So how it started was I'm also a makeup artist, a certified makeup artist. And when I was doing through makeup, anything that I do, I just put a lot of research into it. I'm very much a nerd. And I started looking into the history of makeup. And when you start going to the history of makeup, especially bolder makeup, so a lot of people are going to assume safely that back then, bolder makeup, brighter makeup was reserved for women of the night. And so what the suffragists did is they had an issue, because during the suffragist movement, 72 years, started in 1848. 72 years of this struggle. Obviously, the struggle didn't end even after the 19th Amendment, because we're talking about states then with Jim Crow laws preventing other people from having the right to vote. So the struggle continued even past that. But the suffragist movement historically is 72 years. And these women in 1912 decided they needed to have something that showed themselves apart. White was very common, especially in the South, when it came to women's dress, and so they decided to go ahead and use red lipstick to tell each other apart, because there were a lot of women who were fierce opponents to the women's suffrage. And so when you've got women who are against you and infiltrating your ranks, so they decided to go ahead and wear red lipstick, because these proper women are not going to paint themselves up. It just wasn't, it was going to be too much for them. So then they could tell each other apart, for one. And two, it was a statement of femininity and power, saying I can be feminine, I can be the mother, I can be the teacher in my house, but also at the same time, I have a voice, and it's not anything to be ashamed of. I didn't get to choose to be a woman. I didn't get to choose to be a man, depending on what it is. And then you go from there, and you just identify, and you say, no, I'm claiming my femininity back. I'm going to have my power as well, and you're going to give me a voice. And so there's a difference between suffragists and suffragettes. Suffragists were a little bit more peaceful, and more likely the libertarians of today, where we're like, please, let's do this peacefully. Let's protest at the ballot box before it gets violent. And then there were suffragettes who were pretty damn radical and rebellious. And they burned, I believe they burned a couple of churches. And this is worldwide. This is not just the US, just so you know. This whole movement was worldwide. It was in the UK as well, simultaneously happening, as we were struggling with it as well. And so they were very rebellious. Those are the ones who were going through hunger strikes, and they were being arrested, and they were busting into men's clubs and shouting for women's suffrage. And they were real rebellions. I mean, like Emmeline Pankhurst, of course, that's in the UK, but she was a leader of the suffragettes. And again, so it was really a rebellious movement of its time. And I like to think that the women in the liberty movement are the ones really carrying on the original cause of the suffragists. They're the ones who said, no, we will not leave. This is our right, and you are denying my right. Not that it's a privilege. Voting is not a privilege. If you are going to be a participant, especially one that did not give your consent, then you have a right to a voice in that government. And so we, again, like with what we're dealing with as libertarians, and our voices are being prevented from being lifted up through media and the debates and such. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like we have to have a stronger push in politics as women. And I wanted to honor the suffragists. I wanted to show people that we did not forget the violence and the opposition that they struggled with for 72 years. It's something that definitely needs to be honored. And it's really not. It's not as honored as it should be. And we don't have a lot of monuments to the suffragists. We don't have a lot of talk about it in U.S. history in our schools. It's just not talked about, and I wanted to really bring it forth. I didn't want it to just turn into, one day where like Trump and all these other people are like, hashtag suffrage 100, and then it like fades into history again. It shouldn't be that. It was a massive struggle, and it was not in their favor for a really long time, and they deserve to be honored.
Absolutely. And it continues worldwide. You look at other countries, like you can't give in. I can't tell you how many people ask me, why are you a feminist? Because, you have your rights here, but I've traveled globally. I've been to Dubai. I've been to the Middle East, all over. And there are so many places where you simply do not have the right as a woman. And so if we stop talking about it, they lose their voice too, because if we hold our rights to be true human rights, then they deserve their rights as well. And so I think that by continuing to discuss it, it just brings this to light.
Yes, Stephanie, I like to call myself a classical feminist. I don't call myself, I have to say classical feminist because I want to go back to, again, like what the suffragists did. And that was the feminist movement. That's actually what started feminism, that we know it today. But obviously, it's grown into something way different. So I don't claim modern feminist and feminism, but I do claim classical feminism.
I would classify myself as an individualistic feminist. And there are, you get to some of these nuances. I'm certainly not a third wave or second wave. But certainly an IFEM, which is underneath the guise of what a libertarian feminist would be. Like I said, we can discuss the problems while determining what the best way to handle it is a lack of government intervention.
Well, we're turning over a lot of social paradigms, that have been traditional in human evolution now for 300. Laura could probably talk more about evolutionary biology than I could on this. But we've overturned a lot of things, but now, what are the new movements for women in politics? What do you feel are the next battles of women equality? Or is it just because the suffrage movement's been going on for 100 years now, really, in a lot of ways, and you hear things like traditionally it seems like sex workers' rights and I would say child rearing is still a female-dominated issue, and that's where things like school choice and there's a lot of interesting things to be talking about women's. I don't want to say that because obviously men are just as involved in raising their kids and those kind of things, but traditionally it's decisions.
Well, you say there's a book called All the Rage that I am a little bit obsessed with. And men are raised right now with the ideology of equality. So most of the guys I talk to who are my age or younger, they will say, yes, men should share in housework, men should do all these things. And a lot of them do. Until children come into play, and then something shifts. And so while there's still lip service to it, reality is that women do still manage the house. What I would like to see is an acceptance of different choices. So I would like to see where it's acceptable for men to take off for family needs, because maternal bias doesn't just impact women, it impacts men. Part of the societal paradigm is that women are in charge of that, so men who take off for family time get judged, they get loss of promotion, they don't get hired, they don't get as much money. And women who choose to not stay at home or who choose to prioritize work over home get the kind of reverse maternal bias, if you will. Now, all that's to say is that I think that we should be having these discussions. I think we should be putting them to light. I don't think we should have government mandates telling businesses or families how to handle things. So I would like to see those societal paradigms change, and it only changes when we have more voices, more diversity of voices, more people saying this is a problem, let's discuss it, and on the flip side, more people accepting and listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like drawing in more people, not just women, into the liberty movement has got to be our number one concern. But how do you feel like we can bring more women leaders into this? You guys haven't had a real say in politics. I think Madam Marie O'Hare, who's a very controversial Texas woman, whom I love, but she kind of changed a lot of my mind on the founding fathers when she's like, they didn't mention women one time when they were writing, the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, and just was kind of left out of the conversation. So while they moved the bar forward, they left a lot on the table, obviously. What would, I guess I'm trying to do a long-winded way of with these political battles of bringing women into it, do you guys feel like you were marginalized and now there's more to take back? Or, yeah.
Yeah. To answer your question, you're right, they didn't mention women specifically, but to be fair, if you look, because I'm a nerd too, and my area of nerdiness is an etymology, or the root of language, if you will. And so at the time, if you were to say he, that was the gender neutral pronoun. So you're right, they didn't mention women specifically. And to be fair, at that point, women were not included in the conversation. They weren't. But when they said he, they meant human. Just like today, Webster now uses the word they as the gender neutral singular. It was the word of the year for Webster in 2019, if you will. So I think language has evolved, but she still made a good point. And I think that it's not necessarily about marginalization, although that does bring up the conversation of privilege and things like that. It's more about how can we get in front of people? And instead of talking about what matters to me, we need to start talking what matters to people, regardless of who they are. Oh, Kate, you can add to that or not.
Yeah, no, that's totally what we're trying to work on. It's yes, we're looking at the ladies and the men in the past, the decisions they've made, but as much as we need to keep that in our the forefront of our minds to learn from history, we also have to make sure that we're using that history for the future. We're not dwelling on it. We're not we're not spoiled by it. We're not stunted by it, and we don't hit this plateau where we think we have to die on this particular hill. Oh no, our hill is still way in the future because we're still dealing with it. It's based on society, and it's how we demand our voice, it's how we raise our children, and it's how we talk to each individual and we listen in order to get past everything that we've had to struggle with in the past. So we got to get to the future, and that's how we do it, is we focus on the future. We don't focus on the struggles. We don't focus on what happened when you went through college, and you're talking about football players, and you're talking about how women and men are treated differently, even on college campuses with social. Everything is happening. It's different. We've got to make sure we're teaching our children right now how to just treat each other as individuals, not based on what they look like.
Just kind of digest the past of what we have been is imperfect human beings, and then moving forward. So what would you say are kind of the practical solutions or steps that we could really be taking both in politics and in kind of cultural life?
For me, again, I'm going to go back into parenthood. I have a 5.5-year-old daughter. I have a 7.5-year-old son. And I do everything I possibly can to, on their level, show them the truth of what's happening in the world. I don't shield them away from the things that are happening on TV with the riots. I don't shield them away from the things that are happening with qualified immunity in the police state. I don't I don't shy them away from what's happening with a female and a male presidential candidates and the differences that they have to go through right now. I don't shield them away from that. I want them to see the differences. I want them to see the struggles. I want them to see the fights, because if they see the fights, they're going to see the causes, and then their little wheels are turning, and they say, well, they ask all these questions. I love it. I love that my kids ask all these questions, and it's on their level. And there's sometimes where I have to be like, okay, they're just not gonna be able to comprehend this just yet, and I'll say, you know what, it's this. I promise, I will tell you, more when you can understand, but we're just not right there yet. But if they ask a question talking about causes and ideas, they really build on that. And I think that's what we need to do as parents, is we really need to compound that individual thinking and the causes and the critical thinking that is sorely lacking in public school right now. Critical thinking is out the window, and it's creating this future of, you have to think for me, mom, you have to think for me. And I'm seeing parents struggling with their children because they did not take as much of an active role in their children's upbringing and their education. They just let the public school systems mold their children for them. And now they're like, this is not what I wanted. Well, there's no return policy, guys. There's none. Like, they're going to soak up whatever they're taught. And if you are not the one teaching them on top of what they're getting, which should just be fundamental in school, then you're not doing that great of a job for the future as a parent.
So I tend to agree. I have a 15-year-old and a little further along, and I love how questioning. I've taught her to question everything. She can question me. I have a rule in my house that there's no topic that is off limits, because I've always told her, if I give you an off-limit topic, you're going to go and look at places that may not be an effective resource. So we talk a lot about home, about what is a real resource. How can you spot legitimate research? How can you respond without emotion to discern what is effective and what is ineffective, what is truth, what is not truth, and also recognizing where opinions kind of go in. And I think if we teach our kids to think for themselves, and she disagrees with me on a lot, and believe me, she's in that 15-year-old stage where sometimes we don't always agree, and that's beautiful, because I had that stage too, where I thought my parents were idiots. I think everyone does. But I think that starts, it's absolutely a generational thing. There's a famous riddle. If a man and his son are in the hospital and they were in a car accident, and the doctor comes out and says, I can't operate on this kid because he's my son. And they've been asking this riddle since the 50s. And what's fascinating is a kind of an aside on how kids soak up knowledge is in the 50s, the parents couldn't say the mother, the kids did. Then you fast forward to the 60s and the 70s. The end of the 70s, suddenly the kids are saying, oh, it's the stepdad, stepmom, mom. You're seeing an adjustment. The kids, now the parents who are kids in 50s still say the mom. You fast forward to the 80s, now it's two dads, or it's a grandmother. They're starting to see more diversity and more divergent thought. And so it's just a testament to this is a very generational thing. And so for me, the practical steps begin in education, not just with your kids, but everyone around you, and not education as in beating somebody over the head. Education as a conversation. There are topics I know nothing on, and there are topics I can talk for hours on that probably no one wants to hear me talk about, and that's okay. And we should be able to have those conversations with humility. I think that's a big failing in the libertarian party, we have a lot of people who think they know everything, and that is not how we win. We win by partnership, we win by acceptance, and we win by having the conversation. So for me, the practical step is education.
Stephanie, how do you feel? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this because you've been in the party for a long time, about how the current ticket for our presidential candidate is compared to previous years. Are you proud of where the Libertarian Party has ended up in the last 20 years, where we're now?
So here's a fun fact. The first presidential campaign I worked on was Harry Brown and Joe Jorgensen in '96.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So I loved Dr. Joe back then. I still remember meeting her. I found a picture, I need to upload it, of me as this, like, I couldn't even drive yet. That's how young I was and working on that. And I've seen different iterations of candidates, of course. And Dr. Joe has always been, I know people call her Mama Joe. I always call her Dr. Joe. I can't help it. But this is one of the most highly educated people we've ever run on our ticket. She is articulate. She absolutely knows her information. She is somebody who approaches you with humility. And I've always loved that about her. In stark contrast to, quite candidly, some of the other people who were on the ticket this year, there was a decided lack of humility and attacking, which made me sad. But to answer your question, I did vote for Gary Johnson. He was not my favorite. I voted for him strictly for ballot access rights, and I hate to admit that, but I didn't think that he was the best that we could do. I miss the days of Harry Brown and people like that. And I think Joe brings us back to that. I think she brings a classiness that we've been lacking at top of ticket for a while.
And a bit of individuality too, because we can, yes, we have to kind of say, we're different because she's a woman versus, the other rich, white, male, creepy, other presidential candidates. So we do have a little bit of that, but I got to spend 4 days on the campaign trail with her as her makeup artist and somewhat of a personal assistant in certain situations. And she's an incredible individual. And the topics of just being able to talk with her that's not political there were so many really fun stories she had and conversations that we had. And she's not there. Let's put it this way. She is not basic. She's not basic. She is very much an individual, and she shines through it, and I love it. That's what I love about her. She's very confident in herself, and she's confident in her ideas and her intelligence. She's confident in her husband. She's just confident in her team too, and rightfully so. She's got an amazing team around her right now that are doing incredible things for her, and that's what we've got to get to.
She does have a very interesting team, and it's kind of interesting to see. She might be one of our first to really push libertarianism into mainstream. Like, this is how we run a modern campaign, and that's something that anybody who's run as a candidate or anybody who works in the party knows a very difficult part of bringing people in and pushing libertarian ideas. It's hard to run for office, and it's hard to have those cameras out there. It's nice to have a candidate that, I'm not saying that what is Aleppo is a huge gaffe, and we're in the age of the current presidential candidates, but it's also nice to know that this is somebody that really does know, it seems like, the interlying philosophy of the Libertarian Party. But
absolutely, and she lives it. Of all the candidates we've had, gosh, she is probably among my top 3 that I've enjoyed, just had the absolute pleasure of working with. She's fantastic. I can't say enough about her. And hopefully she won't be the only libertarian. Here's another fun fact. Everybody thinks that another woman was the first woman to get an electoral college vote, but it was actually Toni Nathan. She got the very first libertarian vote. She was the first woman to get an electoral college vote in our history. She was a libertarian ticket. We had a defector vote as electoral college here in Texas.
So what are the opportunities to get more women involved and build on kind of Jojo or Dr. Jorgensen's momentum?
Oh, that's a really broad question, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know it is, but let's get down into it. I kind of want to hear your thoughts.
So for me, I talk a lot to people, but more than that, I listen. You're in the South, so I can say this. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. So for me, getting more women in the party is about listening to the concerns that they have. It's about, again, I probably sound like I'm beating a dead horse. It's about not being dismissive. It's about realizing they may have problems accessing childcare. So is the solution more government control, or is it perhaps loosening the regulations so that we can have more in-home care child options? We do have a problem with adoption being so expensive. And I hear a lot of women saying, I'd love to adopt, I'd love this, but oh my gosh, it is expensive to adopt. Maybe the solution isn't more government intervention, maybe it's less. And so listening to them and talking about the issues that they care about is the key, I think, to getting more women in liberty movement. And it's about approaching, again, with that humility and that passion and reaching people on their level.
Yes, and I'm going to go a bit further, and I'm going to be controversial right here. Totally, absolutely agree with you. I'm not going controversial in the fact that I disagree with you. I think we need to be re-educating the men in the liberty movement on how to approach women and talking about political discussions, because women don't react well to one-liners like taxation is theft. I mean, we as people in the liberty movement, we love it. We like having that because we like to have a little bit of, we like to rock the boat. And if you yell taxation is theft in an audience, you're going to get a lot of looks, right? And most of them are probably nasty. But for me, it's disheartening to see that we even have a group on Facebook called "This is why there's not more women in the Libertarian Party or in the Liberty Movement." And honestly, I'm a member of it. I've actually had to post on it before.
Me too.
And I do have to say that the people that we post about are not real active members in the Libertarian Party. They're all keyboard warriors who are they have this screen that acts as this barrier between their masculine insecurities and this world out there. And that's how I see it anyway. But I really think it's a conversation we have to have with more men. If you want to grow this party, you're going to have to look at the other half of the world population. You cannot just say this is a man's club. And obviously we're showing it, especially here in Texas. I think that's probably one of the most surprising things is Texas was the first libertarian party to have a full female officer corps. But we're also having these women step up. And so we really need to be, just like in the suffragist movement back then, you had your male sympathizers, you had these husbands, you had these brothers and fathers that were working towards women's suffrage as well. And we need those people like you, Colin, to come out and just really boost everybody up, an individual up, regardless of their gender. And we really need to make sure that we're telling people, especially other men, if you're a man and you see another man talking about how judging a libertarian woman based on her looks, that they need to cut that shit out. Because I see that all the time. All over social media. And it's
Kate, I'm going to interrupt you. What's really funny is that usually the guys who are saying this are not 10 out of 10s themselves. I'll just put it that way. I mean, oftentimes I want to hold up that mirror and say, really, dude? I mean, come on now. But you're right. That needs to stop. It happens at all major parties, but it's particularly awful, I think, in the LP. And I can't think of a single woman in the party who has not encountered this. Not just comments on appearance, it's assumptions based on dress. Oh, she must be enter adjective here because she's chosen to wear X, Y, and Z. And it's every single one. It's not, oh, it's just this one time. And further, we need to simply say, not get defensive and say, what happened? How can we improve? Instead of saying, oh, well, not all men. Because unfortunately, while it's not all men, it is a pervasive number. And if every single woman I know has encountered that, but no man knows another man who does this, there's a problem, men. You need to step up and start noticing.
I think that was weird
Yes.
for me going to libertarian conventions. I'm not sure if you know who Tatiana Moraz is. She does a lot of like bingle or like jingles and stuff for like Bitcoin Magazine. She's done a couple different things for the Libertarian Party. And she and I became pretty good friends because we saw each other at different circuits. But she showed me all the different messages she gets from people she meets at conventions. And I maybe just libertarian guys, we can get very excited about some things, just like we all have our nerd areas. And sometimes when it comes to politics, it's nice to talk to somebody that has those kind of views. But then we overdo it, or we make these assumptions in our head that like it's definitely wrong. And just trying to recognize that. For me, it was kind of an eye-opening look at our own conventions and who the Libertarian Party is. And I don't think it's a majority of libertarian males, but I could definitely recognize that. I don't know. I've seen firsthand proof sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, guys, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
2018 National Convention in New Orleans was eye-opening for me for sure on how far some of these men would go just to get a picture. Now, I'm not kidding. Like, I love dressing very feminine. I'm a dressmaker. I like to be, I'm very feminine. I'm also very flamboyant too. Like I'm very Dolly Parton. I'm going to do me. And if you don't like it, that's your problem. That's a you problem, not a me problem. And so I went to convention in 2018 and I remember walking down, I was actually dressed in business casual and I was walking down the aisle and I didn't know anybody. Like I didn't even know the majority of people from Texas at that time because I'm rural. So I didn't get the opportunity to meet a lot of the people who were going to be there. So I was very green when I walked down that aisle. And I had these men pull me to the side, take me by the arm and ask for my picture. And they didn't even ask for my name. They wanted to take selfies with me. And they didn't even ask for my name or what state or if I was even a delegate. They just wanted to, I didn't even know who these people were. And these were from different states, like all throughout. And I'm like, I don't even know you. And I know that seems like, oh, well, maybe they followed you on Facebook. No, actually, these people did not. They saw me at convention, then befriended me on Facebook. And I have to heavily go through new friend requests if I don't know them personally. And here's another example of, guys, come on, we've got to clean, you guys got to have a conversation or a meeting or something. Because there are some men who will only befriend women in the liberty movement. I will look at the mutuals and it will be Stephanie and Risa and all of these women and Chrissy, and it's no men whatsoever in their friends list. It's almost like they're collecting female libertarians in their friends list. That doesn't seem very healthy to me anyway. Just something to point out as well.
And I'll follow up. Julie Borowski, and I don't always agree with her, but she posted on Twitter asking the question, what was the age that you were first like catcalled or what have you? And you can go on Twitter and I answer that because I remember clearly how old I was, because I play golf just like Kate. I play a lot of golf, and mine was I was not even a teenager yet. And I remember my first convention, I wasn't even 18, and this same thing was happening. This was really before the age of selfies, but it was, let me take your picture. People, it still happens where you'll hug just that moment too long, or the overly familiar touches. And here's the fine wire that women walk. If we say stop it, we're seen as bitchy. If we allow it, we're seen as easy. So it's really putting us in a tough spot. And as libertarians, we are all about consent and bodily autonomy, if you will. And I am horrified. And it's not just me, it's not just Kate. Every single woman in the liberty movement has experienced something along these lines. And there are some phenomenal men, and I don't want them to feel like I'm attacking all men, because it's not all men, but it's pervasive and it's problematic. And it's not just libertarians, as we can see with Biden, obviously, but it's a significant problem. So I would like Kate said, y'all have a meeting here, figure out how to stop it. I'm like Kate, I also go through all my friend requests. I've cleaned out probably a good 60 or 70 in the past 3 weeks because the manner of messages I get are awful. And I will talk to some of my guy friends, like, what's going on here? And I can't tell you how many of them innocently will say, "What did you say to them?" Nothing. They're just messaging me. And my girlfriends, all like Kate and everybody else. It's awful. And so I hide my relationship status. I hide a lot of stuff from people online because of that.
Yeah, I had to do the same thing. I'm married. I don't have my husband's last name. And that's a personal choice. And we've decided not to put our relationship on Facebook and everything. But now that, of course, I'm doing some more interviews and stuff since we've kind of become officers.
Yeah.
And he's getting these trickle down friend requests from people, and he's just like, he knows what it is. It's people like scouting out the competition, thinking that they're, they have any kind of shot or something. I'm married, like I am settled. I am, I'm concrete and Joseph Duncan, like that is my partner. And but it's really disheartening to see that a lot of even our activism can be sometimes sexualized. And I kind of play on it too. Again, I'm very flamboyant, but I enjoy what I do. But yeah, and it's kind of like, as libertarians, we get on this whole thing about those bad apples in the police force, and there's no such thing as a good cop, because if the good cops don't do anything about bad cops, then apples, you spoil the bunch. Sorry guys, you're kind of doing the same thing when it comes to sexists and the misogyny that's happening even within the LP. If you're a good guy and you don't step up and speak up, then what are you doing? You're actually just letting it go, which is further promoting that it's okay, that is okay, and it's not okay. I'm sick of it, and I've gotten to the point where I will call it out when it happens, and I will, I don't like seeing it. I did not see it, luckily, at the Texas convention. A lot of what I saw in 2018 in the national convention, I did not see any of that or heard anything when it came to generalized sexual identities amongst people. That's one of the reasons why I love LPTexas. The members are incredible people.
Yep.
We are a family, and we really do. We have our spats, but we fight like brothers and sisters. But in the end, like, we all come together. We all love each other. We all support each other, and I love LPTexas, and I'm never leaving.
I will echo that, although I can't say I'll never leave Texas. I can never promise that. But I will promise that I'll never leave and go somewhere where my guns can't go with me.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I didn't want to make it too much of a bashing libertarian males side
Of
of it, but if you're going to talk about bringing more women in and we don't talk about the things that push people out, then, and especially if we can't have these internal dialogues about what's going on within our own party and how do we improve, then when we get to the main stage, then how are we any different? But I'm sorry that kind of stuff happens, because it is weird, and I've seen a lot of proof of it. And I think, though, bringing more, like you're saying, when it shouldn't be even talked about that 4 women are the leaders of our party in Texas or something like that, I think it will become more normalized, hopefully. And I know there's a struggle in the meantime, and it's not anything like an apology or anything for me will do anything, but just talking about it more openly.
Well, and to be fair, I'm going to give a shout out to JBH here, of course, our intrepid national chair. He's done some great work. He's created some different groups and focus groups to talk exactly about this. He's helped take action to remove people who are not just sexist, but racist and homophobic and all the things that we don't wish to be. Because, honestly, it is totally your right to have these opinions. It is also a right to disassociate with people who choose to vocally say these things. And I think that libertarians often forget that. While I don't agree with the government managing my world, I manage who I interact with, and we as people have that right too. So JBH, I think, as a leader, is going to help this significantly.
Yes, and to further on that, like, people have to remember, yes, our philosophy is liberty for each individual, but not everybody is going to have that same philosophy. So just because we do doesn't mean that gives you an open pass to come in and spew your hate speech and then say, oh, but you're libertarians, you should allow this. No.
Yep.
Here's the thing. we are a libertarian party. We do get to control the message because we are a service to the public for our philosophy, and we're not going to let that get muddied by hate speech. We're not going to let that get muddied by talking about violence against certain people. And so let's just make that clear. We might have a philosophy to say, yes, you can say whatever you like as an individual, but you don't get to say it in our party because, sorry, that is not our branding. That is not our message. We are a service to the public on a certain message and a certain topic. And you're just going to have to separate the fact. You want to be a little L, fine, be a little L. But if you're going to be a big L, there are some things that you got to take into consideration in your behavior and how you act.
Absolutely. I hold libertarians, honestly, to a much higher standard. And I get constantly disappointed when I see someone act in a way that doesn't shed us in any good light. And I really wish that we would take the steps to, I'm not going to say cancel culture, but certainly call people out who behave badly. Say, this is not acceptable. You're right. I don't think the government should go in and restrict your viewpoints, but I don't have to listen to you.
Well, it's been something that's plagued people who defend free speech for a long time, and we get ourselves into trouble with it. Like, take for instance, gay equality. You probably couldn't find a more progressive party than the Libertarian Party, but we're also the people that say, hey, you don't have to bake the cake. Do you ever find that line gets kind of crossed with women? Kind of side, like, you have total freedom of association. Like, we don't want to make a business owner, bake something or do something they don't want. We'd never get an individual do something that they am personally against.
Well, that's where it takes having more people who are different backgrounds in leadership and guiding. Because you're right. I totally don't think that they should bake the cake or have to bake the cake. I think they're idiots for not accepting money, good green money from people who are happily paying them. I think that's a terrible business model. And ultimately, I hope that the community around them shuns them for being such idiotic people. But it's not the government intervention. And so I talk about things from that perspective, and I actively encourage boycotts. I actively encourage people to use their voice and to step up and say, this isn't okay. Because yes, free speech absolutely reigns, but people also forget that freedom of speech is not freedom of speech in someone's individual homes. It's freedom of speech from the government intervening, and that is a significant nuance that people tend to forget. It's like the mask thing that's going on. I wear my mask. I'm sure I'll get a lot of crap for that, but I wear it everywhere I go out in public. It may do nothing. But you know what? If a business owner says you need to wear a mask to come in my establishment, that is their rules. We can't say, I'm going to tout my freedoms and ignore your rules, your guest rights, if you will, while still saying they don't have to bake the cake. So ultimately, it's about recognizing property rights as well. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Kate, do you have anything to add?
No, absolutely agree with you on that. I had something I was going to add to it, but it was very small and just another example of what you had with the bake the cake. So you covered it very well.
Thank you.
I really appreciated your guys' perspective on a lot of these things, because it's interesting to talk about where the party can go and the practical solutions that if we get these things right, we do have a winning agenda, right, with the Libertarian Party.
Absolutely. And what I like to tell people is that anybody can live free in a libertarian world. I can't live free in a socialistic, communistic, Republican, Democrat world because they'll never accept my freedoms and my basic human rights, whereas I recognize the rights of everybody to self-associate. And so I'd hope that more people come to the movement and see the value in it. It will take time.
It will take time and patience, but also a lot, like she said, listening. We've got to listen to the public. We got to listen. And the only thing we need to come back to them after we hear their problems is say, there are other solutions besides solution A and solution B, which, just so you know, are basically the same solutions. And we need to tell them about innovation in thinking and innovation in thought. We gotta try to educate a little bit and gently, not shove it down people's throats on what they consider to be their issue, issue voters. And we've got to listen. And then we've just got to say, look, there are other solutions. do you want to hear the solutions, or are you really comfortable with this? Or, you ask more questions. That's how you get to it, is you ask more questions. You don't answer a lot of questions. And that's how you're going to get them answering down the path of liberty. And you just keep asking those questions, and you go down that path with them, and they break it down for themselves. You let them go down the path of them being smart, because they are. Everybody really is smart when it comes to politics. It's just they feel like it's become such a game that they've been pushed out. It's such a club that they've been pushed out, members only. And that's one of the things I love about the Libertarian Party, is everybody who is in the liberty movement are not groomed politicians. We don't have dynasties. We're all individual people who are just sick of the shit around us, and we're ready to have our individual liberties back. And it's not a don't tread on me situation, it's a don't tread on anyone situation. And I'm getting that from Ovens O'Brien, another fantastic female libertarian that I absolutely adore. So yeah, we've got to focus on listening, like Stephanie said, and we've got to focus on letting them come to the solutions of liberty by giving them the right path to go down, not by shoving them down that path, because they're already dealing with non-consensual choices made for them. So we don't need to create that anymore.
So in our last little 3 or 4 minutes here, so women that want to get involved in the Libertarian Party in Texas, what kind of opportunities are there for them to volunteer? How can they help out? What can you do?
Oh, goodness. What don't we have need for, Kate? I mean, there are so many options, because unlike the big two, we don't have the funds that a lot of people have, because we're constantly spending money on, I don't know, defending ballot access from Republicans and Democrats who are afraid that we're going to take their votes, if you will. There are opportunities to start social media campaigns. There are opportunities to run on Slack. There are opportunities to be active in local communities. I mean, the sky's the limit. Honestly, I ask people, what are you passionate about? Let's find the fit from you there. In my real life work, I was a recruiter. And so for me, it's about matching someone's passion and their love and marrying that with their political identity. And so honestly, everything is available. There's no glass ceiling. Tell us what you want and we'll find the right spot.
And usually I'm going to tell people who are new to the movement, start local. You already know your town. You already know your city. You already know the struggles that you deal with from that perspective. Dig a little bit deeper into that. Start with either school board. If you're in a city, don't try to go to everything local. Just say, okay, what's, like Stephanie said, what's your issue? Is it education? All right, look into what's happening with your school board. Go to school board meetings. Just start with one small government entity that you want to research and you want to be on top of, and go from there. And if you feel like you want to branch off into other things, go for it. If you feel like that's your niche and you just want to be like, you know what, I'm going to run for school board, and then beyond that, I'm going to run for state school board. Like if that's your path, go for it. But start local and then build from there if that's what you want to do. And that's going to be the best. That's for anybody, man or woman. Like if you're new to the liberty movement, start local, because you already have that knowledge that a lot of people don't have.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for continuing the fight and leading us forward in this. It's an exciting year to be a libertarian of all genders.
It is, very much so. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Bye.